Well, here we go again, folks. The Disney Plus MCU strikes again. Oh, wait, no it didn't. Werewolf by Night fucking rules. Yeah, the MCU's first ever special presentation is here. Its first holiday special, the Halloween gift that keeps on haunting just in time for the spooky season. Anyone who was disappointed that this was the secret screening at Fantastic Fest needs to get over themselves, because Michael Giacchino arrives as one of the MCU's best, and you heard me folks, best filmmakers, with a roaring, monstrous triumph that perfectly captures the kind of classic horror thrills we all love in things like Hammer horror and the classic Universal monster movies. Werewolf by Night is a total throwback, unashamedly so, from its black and white grainy aesthetic to Giacchino's evocative score that simultaneously could only have come from him. And that's kind of the best thing about it. It stands on its own. It's not only a singular entry in the MCU, it oozes with directorial vision, and it features easily the best new character in all of Phase 4 by way of Gael, Garcia, Bernal's Jack Russell. For whatever issues you may have with Phase 4, and oh, believe me, I sympathize, because is this phase, it's just a disappointment. With Werewolf by Night, you have to check it out. It is so worth it. This is something that I'm going to recommend to people who have maybe been a bit too burnt by the MCU, or maybe aren't really interested in the interconnected universe, or just the same old that the MCU has been giving them since, God, I don't even know when. It's something refreshing, and you won't be disappointed because Giacchino went full-on fucking beast mode once he got into the director's chair. Just like how Jack Russell goes full beast mode every moon, or if he's deprived of his perfect cup of coffee. Luckily, Trade Coffee is here to prevent your inner werewolf from coming out. You guys have heard me talk about Trade multiple times, and goddamn do I love their service. It's a coffee subscription service that partners with the best local roasters across America to help you curate the perfect coffee for you, and ships straight from the roaster to your door as often as you like. I mean, if you're a coffee addict like me, you'll probably get 2 bags like every single week, and I'm not kidding. I go through those 2 bags like Jack Russell going through the guards in this special. You guys know this. I've been a Trade subscriber for like 3 years or so, and it was like night and day going from drinking coffee as just this, yeah, sure, we'll get the latest Starbucks in Target, to having the best freaking coffee of my life. And the best part about all of this is Trade's team has worked with me to create my own custom FilmSpeak collection. That's right, folks. If you want to be drinking the coffee that I'm drinking when I'm staying up late recording these videos, typing out scripts, yelling at editor Lawrence to get something done, that doesn't actually happen, folks. But that's the coffee that I'm drinking when I'm going through the process of making these videos. And some of the ones that you'll find in there are 2 of my absolute favorites, Crazy Goat by Klatch and Rise and Shine by Greater Goods. Get on that train. Those are 2 great micro roasters. And if you're not as partial to dark roast as I am, no problem. Trade will have the right coffee for you, no matter how in line or far removed your tastes are from mine. So if you want to support small businesses, which who doesn't, and brew the best cup of coffee you've ever made, it's time to try Trade Coffee now. Trade is offering our viewers a total of $30 off your first order, an incredible deal that I honestly am so jealous you can do. And you also get free shipping at drinktrade.com/filmspeak. That's drinktrade.com/filmspeak for $30 off your subscription to the best coffees in the country. And thank you so much to Trade Coffee for sponsoring this video. Giacchino offers no quarter to Marvel with his inaugural MCU project. Literally, the first thing he does is cut a gash in the Marvel Studios animated logo. He distorts his own opening Marvel fanfare, signifying that, no, this will absolutely fucking not be the same old thing we've been getting during Phase 4. It's a bold statement, which frankly feels like some other MCU entries have tried to make as well, only for the ensuing film or episodes to not deliver, or just, deliver more of this same schlock. If you're gonna do something with the title card, actually make it serve a purpose. Like, make that a statement. Like, we're shaking things up, and then can do it. Werewolf by Night wastes no time in letting us know that this time you are in for something fresh. The monochrome is one thing, and the old-timey film crackle and cigarette burns adds another unique layer to proceedings, but that's ultimately a surface-level aesthetic choice. It's in how Giacchino lights, frames, and edits where the true unique vision comes in. There have been occasional touches of monochrome in the MCU before, the first couple episodes of WandaVision, that one set piece in Love and Thunder, but this is the first time it feels like black and white has been successfully combined with the overall filmmaking to create a completely unique atmosphere for the MCU. A wholly convincing homage to 30s and 40s monster movies and serials. Giacchino wants you to think of Hammer horror, and he not only succeeds from the jump, he actually makes his homage more and more convincing as the special goes on. The establishing shots of Bloodstone Manor are well and good enough, but it's shots like the brilliant first reveal from the shadows of Gael Garcia Bernal's Jack Russell that really drive it home as a tribute to classic horror that still manages to have its own identity under Giacchino's style. And speaking of Jack Russell, what an inspired bit of casting! What a fascinating and honestly refreshing lead character. Phase 4 has been defined almost entirely by, the multiverse. How many cameos can we pack inside this one TV show or film or whatever? Or already established MCU characters such as Wanda, Vision, Spider-Man, Black Widow, Doctor Strange, all of the above. Or coming of age among or with superpowers stories like Ms. Marvel, Hawkeye, hell, Spider-Man even falls under this category as well. Yeah, every now and then we get a Moon Knight, but for the most part, it seems to be a bit of a mess. A character who deliberately locks himself away whenever his own powers trigger, who does not desire to use them, who has a reputation as being a prolific hunter-killer, yet is in reality a deeply benevolent, sensitive human being? All of that feels like new ground for the MCU. The closest character I can think of is the Hulk, and well, that's become something entirely different. At the very least, a lot of the stuff the MCU has been doing in Phase 4 has really felt like we've gotten the same thing once, twice, 2, 3, even 4 times in a row, really. I really appreciate the economy with which they introduce us to Jack and allow us to understand who he is. We'll get more into the hour-length runtime in a bit, but because the special is only working with 52 minutes, it doesn't draw anything out unnecessarily. That being said, it's also a little bit longer than most episodes of the Disney Plus shows, so it doesn't need to steamroll through the storyline either. In fact, because the special is a one-off, because it's not setting up the next episode, or worse, another project entirely, it feels like the story could only possibly get in its own way. Under Giacchino's hand, however, and with the roadmap laid out with writers Heather Quinn and Peter Cameron, it never does. Sure, there are little comedic asides that I will say are actually integrated quite naturally and effectively, and it's not like Werewolf by Night is this, strikingly different, we are creating something that you've never seen before, it's entirely alien to the MCU. No, it's not that dramatic, but it's also free of a lot of the pacing and non sequitur issues that so many other MCU projects are guilty of. Being overly self-indulgent, bringing in cameos, other characters. Nah, you're not getting that in Werewolf by Night. This is its own thing. I think the writing and filmmaking team deserve a lot of that credit, but I think that Werewolf by Night's standalone nature is owed a bit as well. The story itself is probably the special's most cliched element. This isn't a bad thing though. In fact, it's kind of necessary for what the special is going for. A group of death dealers gathering in one room, not only celebrating their achievements and kills, their bloodshed in honor of Ulysses Bloodstone and his greatness, gathering to hunt a monster and secure a prize that will grant them powers of longevity and strength. That's a basic template that has been used in so many classic horror movies, and it might be faster to tell you the ones that haven't used it. And I'm okay with that because it's a great setup for some world building on a side of the MCU that we've previously been shut away from. It's also effective shorthand that makes the most of the special's runtime, giving us a basic familiar narrative that Giacchino can then use to pepper in his specific brand of creativity and waste no time exploring the characters. I also like the way they established this sense of greatness among the hunters, one forged through killing, and it's clear how the other hunters almost look down on Jack Russell for not being as merciless despite apparently having a much higher kill count.
Over 100 deaths, give or take.
Over 100?
Yeah.
Each of the hunters also have a sort of costume, a persona they don when embarking on a hunt that isn't necessarily in line with who they are. It's something they've adopted, similar to the capes and spandex that we see on our favorite costumed heroes. You can already start to see the contrast to Russell, who doesn't put that on as a facade. It's just really who he is. He wears the makeup to honor his ancestors who passed down the gift of the werewolf to him. There's a personal connection. It's not theatrical. There's no pretense. Russell's persona is himself. The other hunters are all about the ego. They relish in the kill, the thrill of it, the rewards reaped from it. Russell, on the other hand, is very much cursed by it. He doesn't enjoy the kill, it's just the curse he bears, passed down from his ancestors. It's a part of him, his bloodline, his family, while for everyone else, they willingly sink into it because it's fun. And I also find Jack fascinating as a commentary on the nature of who we deem as heroes. Even the Avengers killed people in the thick of battle, and they're mostly idolized by the public for their wartime achievements. It's no coincidence that under the opening narration, the first drawing is one of the Avengers. The public would almost certainly condemn Jack or Man-Thing just by looking at them, even if they knew nothing about him, because they're different. Jack's different. He's a monster, an untamed beast hell-bent on destruction, a prejudiced stereotype, and yet he's no less heroic than, say, Clint Barton, if not more so, considering there's far more nobility in Jack's actions than Clint's, especially during Clint's time as Ronin. I find Jack's sensitivity refreshing too. Too many of the MCU's leads are quick-witted fountains of snappy dialogue, and they all sound the same at this point, who stride confidently and project power in a room. Jack feels way more realistic to what, a human being is like. I love the scene where he first encounters Man-Thing, aka Ted, and you learn that he's not there to hunt him like the others, he's there to protect him. You learn Jack uses his privilege as a walker of both worlds, as a person, a hunter, and a monster to help those who are in danger, the ones who are preyed upon, the outcasts, the monsters. His responsibility is to fight for the innocent, to combat injustice against those who have done nothing to warrant it, the hunted. The scene in the crypt later on where Jack shows Elsa compassion is very telling of the kind of person he is. He's not a murderer, he's an empath. He's not that kind of hunter. And I know I said this already, but Gael Garcia Bernal is just absolutely brilliant here. He's handling such a range of emotion, from his compassion to his uncertainty as he enters Bloodstone Manor, to his facade of calm and quiet confidence during the gathering, to his genuine fear as he navigates the maze and hides from the other hunters, the real monsters, to his affable nature with Ted. On top of that, he's just so expressive and charismatic and just downright likable, channeling the very best of classic horror actors. And when things come to a head, when Jack is revealed to be a monster, at least in the eyes of the other hunters, they no longer view him as an equal. They barely even view him as a person. Instead, he's a beast. Even though he has every right to be there, he's just as much a person as they are, just as much a hunter. Just his targets are different. These civilized people call him a monster, but they're much more monstrous than he is, even after he transforms. Jack's rage comes from being provoked. He doesn't want to hurt people, he puts things in place to prevent him from doing exactly that, and yet they want to kill Jack to keep their prosperous life safe or whatever. They're afraid of an outsider and deliberately harm and provoke him. They even force his transformation into a wolf 5 days early, to the point of him having to attack and kill to defend himself. And then they label it as him being a killer. Elsa Bloodstone even sees it as her hands being clean because she's not doing anything to Jack, under the pretense that the wolf is who he really is, and she's just bringing it to light, which is ridiculous. They're vilifying him because of his heritage, because of something he was born with, something that he didn't have a chance to try and prevent, something that really shouldn't even be looked down upon, something that should invoke sympathy. If you hunt the hunted for long enough, eventually they'll lash back, and to afterwards paint them as a predator is just hypocritical revisionism and, dare I say, incredibly topical. By casting Gael Garcia Bernal, a Mexican actor, to play the role and to put the character in such a position, there's also some commentary being made about the state of immigration in the United States, how we treat Latino men, documented or undocumented, without it being stated so overtly that it distracts from the pulpy horror homage that Werewolf by Night functions as. It's provocative imagery. A Mexican man imprisoned in a cage because he's the problem. He's the menace. He doesn't legally belong here. He disrupts their sheltered, bigoted way of life and then tortured to the point of desperate retaliation. It's inhumane and yet an all too real allegory to the immigration stories we hear today. What's so masterful and tasteful about the handling of this particular aspect is how Giacchino uses the universality of movie monsters and what they've always represented to hint at a larger theme simply by casting a brilliant actor in Gael Garcia Bernal and allowing him to fill Jack Russell with his truth. It's a fine line to walk to make that kind of statement in a genre piece like this, but then again, social commentary and horror often go hand in hand, and the fact that Giacchino recognizes this shows his deft understanding of the genre more than any black and white filter or gruesome kill ever could. It's the kind of beautifully woven nuance and stance the MCU has been missing when trying to make statements across their projects. And that's the right effect, as it still allows you to enjoy the pulpy horror thrills, if not more so, that the special provides. There is an excellent atmosphere in the maze, even a couple quasi-jump scares that don't feel like they're there to be cheap, but actually serve as a tension relief to keep the pace moving. Giacchino subverts the jump scare and how he reveals that Jack and Ted are friends. There's some nice humor there, and it's actually a little bit heartwarming. The best thing is that Ted is still terrifying. I mean, damn! Man-Thing has some gnarly kills in this, and I seriously love how legible the fight scenes are. The cutting can be fairly quick, but it's not to the point of sensory overload or to disguise bad coverage or choreography, which a lot of other fights in the MCU are definitely guilty of. When Jack is transformed into the werewolf, the way he slaughters the entire room looks fantastic. The way he jumps from the statue, from the shadows to kill the first guard is probably the moment that Giacchino most perfectly nails the old-time horror movie aesthetic he's going for, but it all looks so great. That long hallway shot as the door is closing, the light gradually reducing to pitch darkness, save for when the electric batons light up, is unreal. It's strategically terrifying, limiting the light sources to emphasize the unpredictability of carnage, closing the window of hope for these grunts and anyone else trapped inside with Jack. Having Jack strike in flashes, the bloodshed often depicted through silhouettes and harsh shadows. It's a kind of creative decision that evokes the most primal of fears and allows our imagination to populate the situation with the most terrifying imagery imaginable. If nothing else, Werewolf by Night reaffirms the innate power a simple shadow, the things we don't see, has to scare us. Our biggest fear, and this definitely goes for the people torturing Jack in a cage, are the things we don't understand. Learning to see, understand, and realize that they aren't these scary things that we might think they are is the key to progress and acceptance. If I were to pinpoint my biggest criticism of Werewolf by Night, maybe it's just that I wanted more of it. I love Laura Donnelly's Elsa. She's sort of the disappointment of the Bloodstone family, who takes after her more compassionate mother much more than she does her father, who wanted her to commit to the Bloodstone way, who wanted her to be a killer. Elsa's absence has rendered her inadequate in the eyes of her stepmother, and she's even looked down upon as a sort of nepotism baby by the other hunters. She's basically there to deal with a chip on her shoulder, to use the power of the Bloodstone as a way to put up a sort of shield around herself in order to keep her estranged family away from her. I really like this character and Laura Donnelly's performance, and a longer cut really could have allowed us to get her motivations nailed down better. Will she use her inheritance to cease the monster hunting? She's obviously, despite the separation from her family, skilled at hunting in general. After all, she makes the other hunters minus Jack look like absolute clowns by comparison, but we also learn that Elsa doesn't want to be like her father, so it's implied that her abilities come from having grown up in a family of killers, by having her family curse, her family inheritance forced onto her, being what they wanted her to be without taking into account what it was she wanted. And that gives her a great scene with Jack, who also has a complicated history with his family. All families have something in common. They follow us throughout our lives. For good, for bad, they stay. They become an atmosphere. Sometimes we think that by doing something very specifically, we can change and not be like them. Or, as Jack puts it, referring to Ted, sometimes they're a pain in the ass we have to save all the time. We don't choose our families. We don't choose the inheritance they pass down to us, the curse they pass down to us. But we can make our own path. We can make our own family. We can make our own decisions. And we do not have to be burdened by what's come before. We can move forward and make something better. So Jack and Elsa have this mutual understanding and desire to not be what their family curse dictates. But after Bloodstone Manor, Save the Butler, are all wiped out, Elsa decides to make the place her own. Was that her plan all along? Or does she only do so because of happenstance, because Verussa is dead, so she might as well take advantage of it? Is she going to become a villain now? doubt that, but I just think the special in general could have been a little bit clearer about some of these things. I mean, 90 minutes max is really all we needed for this, and it would have allowed some of Elsa's characterization to flourish more. But I don't want there to be any misconception. This is a quibble I have, not an outright criticism, right? Like, it's fine. Honestly, I think that's a great selling point. I wanted the movie to be longer. That's the best thing I could say about this special. I didn't want it to end. I wanted more. Give me more of this. Please make like at least 10 more of these werewolf movies. God, that would rule. It won me over probably within the first 90 seconds, and by the time it transitions gorgeously, I might add, to color, ending on this idea that the world isn't so black and white, which to me is reinforced by the very final scene between Jack and Ted. Seeing these so-called monsters as they are, in color, in the light, in contrast to the harsh draconian black and white lens we had viewed them in the preceding 45 minutes, black and white can be beautiful in the right context, but it's hazy, it's dreamlike, it's an idealization of something. And especially in a horror setting, with the things as deliberately underlit and with shadows emphasized, we're only seeing these creatures at their most menacing, with the shadows and lighting and monochrome emphasizing the fear of the unknown through the aspects each of them obscure combined. When Giacchino adds color, this beautiful, vibrant, lush, almost Wizard of Oz-esque Technicolor, it allows them to be seen as they are, in all of their vibrancy and personhood. There's also a bit of a meta bent to this whole Werewolf by Night thing, of Giacchino taking the trappings, the feel of a classic 30s, 40s monster movie, and using that to inform how he just might be influencing the MCU and redirecting it into a better, more satisfying direction. He's coming into this as a renowned composer, but not as a renowned filmmaker. There's a sense of him being an outsider, and he's telling a story about accepting outsiders, or the perspective an outsider can bring into a situation. And in case I've been a bit ambiguous about it so far, he wiped the goddamn floor with this thing. You don't need to have 50 directorial credits to then make an incredible genre piece. Did Michael Giacchino's close relationship with Marvel help him get in the director's chair for Werewolf by Night? No doubt. Just as Elsa's relationship with her family and Jack's work as a renowned hunter helped them achieve their goals. Does that diminish the fact that once he got to wear the hat, he knocked it out of the park? No, not in the slightest. Werewolf by Night is one of the all-time triumphs of the MCU. It's one of my favorite projects they've ever done, and I can't wait to get more of Jack Russell, Elsa Bloodstone, but I especially cannot wait to get more of Michael Giacchino's incredible work as a director.